Welcome into the Bills Chat halftime show as I try to adjust my camera. You would think that I would have done that before I went live, but apparently I did not. So far, this game has been very enjoyable from a Buffalo Bills standpoint. And I would think that if you have the rooting interest of a Seattle Seahawks fan, not our problem, you're probably pretty annoyed because there's been quite a few mistakes that have either left points on the board for the Seahawks or contributed to the Bills extending drives. But what I think my first thought from this game is you're just seeing very similar to what we saw in the Jets game, a maturity issue between these two teams. On one hand, you have the Bills, an experienced team, a team that's used to playing in big games, playing in big spots. They make the playoffs every year since 2019. None of this is too big for them. The Seahawks, first-year head coach, leading their division finally, kind of smelling some blood in the water when it comes to the 49ers. And you see them out there committing bad penalties, throwing the fumble, the tripping over each other. I'm not really going to blame them on that. That just happens. It's one of those deals. But then the next drive, or the drive before that, snapping the ball over Geno Smith's head, that's just an unforced error. And that cost them potentially 4 points. But also, as the McChronicle makes his way in here, the Bills were lucky, but 14-3 lead at halftime, in my opinion, is justified. Look, this is one, and I agree with you, first of all, that, justified, correct. But a lot of times in sports, you make your own luck. And a lot of times in sports, half the battle is not losing the game for yourself. Perfect example, okay? The Bills on their second drive, it's 4th and 2. They're driving down, and it looks like McDermott wants to go for it, and then McDermott decides to punt. And I thought that was a smart move. Like, to me at that point, the Seahawks had shown you nothing on offense. Go ahead and punt. Now, look, to the Seahawks' credit, they drive down, get within point range of scoring, and then they have the snap go over the head, and they're fine. Or the Bills are fine. The Seahawks get held to a field goal. As Roy Collins says, I hate rain games. Yeah, Roy, I am Team Dome. I do think elements takes out some of the fun of football, but it is what it is. Jonas, yes, finally the Bills started hot. Right off the bat, the Bills go down, get a big touchdown, huge grab by Keon Coleman. You love to see that. I will say, does anybody else feel like the refs are in the way again? And I'm not saying necessarily against the Bills, but just in general, this has a feel of the Jets game, where it seems like after every play, you're just bracing for a flag to come up on the screen. I mean, we had 11 penalties in the first half, 7 on the Bills for 48 yards, 4 on the Seahawks. Josh Allen no longer has gone the entire season without throwing an interception. He did have his first interception of the year. It was a play where he's throwing to Amari Cooper on third down. Cooper's going for a slant route over the middle, and he slips on his break. He does recover, and Allen throws it anyway, but by then the defensive back had the position and, returns it for a pretty good gain. I will say, what a fantastic job by the defense to hold them out of the end zone and out of points on that drive. I'm not overly bothered that Josh Allen has his first interception. I was getting tired of hearing about that because it's one of those things like if a baseball team is, 10-0 through the first 10 games, like they're undefeated, like at some point they're going to lose. The mathematical probability of going an entire season undefeated in baseball is not there. The mathematical probability of throwing as much as the Bills do and going an entire season without an interception is not there. So I'm kind of glad that we can stop hearing about that now. Josh Allen is still having a fantastic season, and he did recover nicely. To me, the Seahawks right now have left 7 points on the board offensively. You could say 3, but 7. And then they gave the Bills either 4 or 7, the either way you want to break it down. Let's go through it all right now. All the mistakes that have piled up here for the Seahawks. First of all, on the first time they're in the red zone, you have the situation where they're on basically the 1-inch line, and the ball snapped over Geno Smith's head for a 30-yard loss. Kenneth Walker does a good job to get it back into field goal range, but the Seahawks have to settle for a field goal. You could look at that as a 7 versus 3 point swing. So right there, that's 4 points. The next drive, after the Allen interception, the Seahawks are set up with beautiful field position. The Bills stuff them on third down. On fourth down, Geno Smith trips over his right guard, goes down. The Bills hold them to 0 points. So that's 3 points off the board there on the Seattle mistake, tripping over yourself. They could have just kicked a field goal. 4 points off the board if you want to give them credit for saying they would have gotten a touchdown. That's 7 points. And then this last drive, okay? Josh Allen throws it away on third down. We all saw the two Bills in motion at the same time. Ty Johnson and I believe Khalil Shakir. We all knew that play was dead before it started. And then it was Hall on the Seahawks who runs into Josh Allen after the play, not only wipes out the 2-minute motion penalty, but also gives the Bills a free first down. And you even saw Jaron Reed on the sideline. Like, what are you doing? You can imagine how frustrating that is for a Seahawks player that probably all week felt like this is a game that, they're going to really put a lot into. But the Bills go down, to their credit, get a Dalton Kincaid touchdown on National Tight Ends Day. Holy cow, folks. If you've been watching Red Zone today, how many times have you heard National Tight Ends Day every time a tight end scores? It is every announcer's go-to line. I also want to say I was not overly confident that Tyler Bass was going to make that field goal in the rain from like the 25-yard line. In fact, I wouldn't have been surprised if McDermott went for it. So that could have been another 7-point swing. So if you could even look at it as there's a 14-point cushion in there in the 14-3 score from Seahawks mistakes. One player I want to call out for the Bills that I don't think gets enough credit, but on a day where you have seen Geno Smith trip over an offensive lineman, you've seen a shotgun snap go over his head. And I hesitate to say this at halftime. I actually thought about how if this game holds as it is, I probably will give this player my game ball. I don't want to jinx it, but Connor McGovern has been fantastic at center. There was a lot of concerns in training camp and preseason about bad snaps. And look at everything going against the Bills today, okay? From a center standpoint, one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL. You have rain coming down from the heavens, creating an absolute slick ball situation. We saw Josh Allen drop the ball. We've seen Geno Smith drop the ball. It is a sloppy mess out there. And we saw the Seahawks snap a ball over their quarterback's head. And every time Connor McGovern snaps the ball, it's exactly where you want it to be. And you have the Bills' offensive line dealing with crowd noise, going up against the best defensive line they have faced this year. I truly mean that as far as 4 names across the board of the defensive line. The best defensive line they faced this year, Josh Allen's been kept clean, and their communication has been on point. Connor McGovern has been fantastic. And I know that a lot of us were nervous, including myself, about Mitch Morse going away. But Connor McGovern has absolutely answered the bell. And many of us have been saying, I've been saying, this is the best offensive line the Bills have had in the Josh Allen era. And Connor McGovern is the center of that, and he deserves a lot of credit. All right, let's talk about the second half. And while I talk about the second half, I'm going to pull up Seattle hourly weather, because I will say that depending on what the weather forecast looks like, I think Tyrell agrees. McGovern is amazing. I think that will determine what my strategy is. But the Bills lead 14-3. Seattle weather Sunday hourly. They lead 14-3. And as we see right now, it is okay. It's just anytime I'm live, it's just a mess trying to pull this up. But if it's going to be this slick out there, the Bills just absolutely have to take care of the football. A punt is not a bad play. Handing the ball off and punting the ball away is not a bad play. The Seahawks right now don't look like they have much explosion in their offense. Roy, I want to talk about this in a second. But looking at the rest of the day, it looks like we have rain. It looks like it's going to rain up until about the last hour of the game. And you know how weather forecasts go, that could change on a dime. So let's just assume that the weather's going to be slick the rest of the way. The Bills have an 11-point lead. They get the ball coming out of the second half. You can't have any short fields. You can't have any mistakes. To me, I think the two-headed monster of Ray Davis and James Cook running the ball has been fantastic today. The short throws to Shakir The screen passes to Shakir have been chef's kiss, on point, getting him into open spaces, letting him use his open field vision to create space. I love every bit of that. I want to see more of that in the second half. There's no need to force the issue. There's no need to be overly aggressive. I don't think the Bills are going to do that. This is going to be a tough game to come back from. If you're the Seahawks, don't do them any favors. Seattle should run the ball more is an interesting point by Roy Collins, because I think a lot of people came into this game, particularly when Terrell Bernard and then I guess in some cases Dwayne Carter were ruled out on Friday for this game, concerned about the run game. And if you play fantasy football like I do, you certainly know that Kenneth Walker is one of the best running backs in fantasy football. But what's ironic about that is the Seahawks are not a good rushing team. And it doesn't make sense, but when you look at the stats that Kenneth Walker puts up, a lot of it is through the air. And that is borne out today. Geno Smith has 13 pass attempts, and Kenneth Walker has 6 carries for 5 yards. The Bills are doing a fantastic job on Kenneth Walker. We have to mention DK Metcalf being out certainly changes the dynamic of the Seahawks offense. The Bills don't have that scary deep threat they have to worry about. That's not Jake Bobo. I don't believe that's Jackson Smith and Jigba, and I don't think that's Tyler Lockett. So the Bills are able, in some instances, to keep everything in front of them, and they have done a fantastic job on the run defense. And I do think, to Roy Collins' point, though, that Seattle coming out on their first drive and throwing it 3 times was a little bit misguided. Because one, they're starting their 4th right tackle against Greg Rousseau, who again is having a fantastic game everywhere but the stat sheet. And the 2 plays in a row to kill that drive, Greg Rousseau makes a splash play. James Cook has 8 carries for 56 yards. For some reason, this box score that I'm looking at doesn't have a carry for Ray Davis. I remember him having a carry, but now maybe it was on a play where there was a penalty, because there have been tons of penalties. Rasul Douglas is an excellent football player. There were multiple instances in this game where Kenneth Walker had the ability to hit the corner, and Rasul Douglas is the only person there to stop him, and Rasul Douglas stopped him. He is a fantastic football player. Taron Johnson just out there doing Taron Johnson things multiple times, tackling Kenneth Walker to the ground on his own. You haven't noticed Balen Spector, and that's a good thing. I think Balen Spector is holding up well. Second half's getting ready to start. Bills have a 14-3 lead. Let's see more maturity. Let's see more ball control. Let's force the Seahawks, if they're going to come back in this game, to do it the hard way, and let them continue to be the team that makes the mistakes. Last word of this halftime show goes to Duga. Go Bills. Go Bills indeed. Luca and I'll be back tomorrow morning with a Bills Seahawks postgame show found everywhere your podcast can be found. I will be back next week for the Bills Chat halftime show for Bills Dolphins. Oh, by the way, Dolphins lose today, even though Tua is back at home on a last-second field goal to the Arizona Cardinals. The Jets lose today in New England, even though Drake May got knocked out of this game. If the Bills can hold on to win this game, I think they'll have a 4-game lead in the standing. Let me not guess on that. You know what? I know the second half starting. NFL. You know what? I'm not going to do it. I want to get out of here. It's been a fantastic out-of-town scoreboard day. The Ravens lost, even if that does something for you. I mean, surprise, surprise, you get Deshaun Watson out of there, and the Browns are a lot better team. I will see you guys next week on the Bills Chat halftime show.